struggling to differentiate yourself in a crowded consulting field? Wondering how to build a business that truly reflects your expertise and values? Today's guest turned multiple corporate layoffs into an opportunity to create something uniquely hers. In this episode, Alessandra LaTour shares how she founded Latour Leadership Academy to deliver practical, action-based leadership development that helps clients implement real change. In just a year and a half in business, she's navigating the challenges of being a one-woman show while staying true to her vision of creating value through community and practical application. Let's dive in. Welcome to this episode of the Thriving Through podcast. Today, my guest is Alessandra LaTour. Alessandra, welcome to the podcast. Will you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. Thanks so much for having me. So my name is Alessandra LaTour, as you mentioned. I founded Latour Leadership Academy, where we work with all levels of leaders, from aspiring up to executives, to work on their authentic leadership style, creating team synergy, and cultivating positive productivity in the workplace.
Okay, wonderful. What was your path to becoming a self-employed consultant?
Yeah, that's a great question. It was a little bit convoluted. So I've worked for various companies, building leadership programs for them. And as you know, when you work for somebody else, they have constraints and resources and rules you have to work within. So while I really enjoyed creating leadership projects through them, I also realized there were some things that I wanted to do that I wasn't able to do in those settings. And so I found myself in this continuous layoff process. A bunch of different companies were restructuring. And so I was, the target of some of that, unfortunately. And so that led me to wanting to create something of my own where I could continue this work and really put in my style and what I felt was missing from some of the projects that I had worked on in one place.
Okay, tell me more about what was missing.
So there's always, I think when you go into building something for other people, they always have an idea in their mind of what it should look like and what it could be. And you can always kind of move them a little bit towards your side of what you think it should be. But they always have kind of in the back of their mind a way that they see things, a way that they think it should function within their company. And even as good as you might know that industry or the company, you might still have to work within those constraints. So for me, there was a lot more touch points that were missing, just, based on time. And I think building something on my own, I'm able to create that in a different way than those companies might have been able to do. I could do that with my clients, working within their constraints or with individuals that maybe have less constraints that a corporation would. And so just being able to build in those pieces that I envisioned that we weren't able to put in just, purely based on time or by resources or just what they wanted to focus on at the time. So it's given me kind of that liberty to look outside of what I had created and what was missing.
Okay, and how long have you been in business?
The Academy was founded in the fall of 2023. So we're about a year and a half old.
Oh, is it meeting your expectations?
Yes and no. I think any company in its baby phases, I would consider us still baby, not even toddler yet, still has, struggles. I'm right now a one-woman show. And so I'm looking for assistance with various pieces that are not my strengths, and also learning a lot of things in the process that I've never done before. And that I was a novice and maybe now more advanced since I've played with it. So iterating has been a big process for me in the last year and a half with this. So yes and no in terms of whether it's my expectations at this point. So.
Okay. I love what you said about iterating, because sales and marketing, while there's a ton of information out there and there are processes, it is still, in order to make it work for us individually, for our companies, I like to say that we're scientists. And every day when we put our marketing hat on, we put our lab coat on, and we're experimenting to see what works for us. And then once we know what works for us, then we can continue to iterate and improve and fine tune until it's a well-oiled machine.
I love that. I have a science background and I'm a big continuous learner. So for me, it's exciting learning some of these new things, although I think sometimes, your brain gets bogged down with how could I do it better when I might not even know it yet, right? And you think you're getting the handle on it, and then you realize, oh, I'm going a little too far too fast, right? Walk
Right.
before you can run.
So do you feel at times, do you feel overwhelmed?
Um, I wouldn't say overwhelmed. I feel like I have a really good way of framing time management and task management for myself, that it doesn't get to that point. It just becomes, there's a lot to do, and where do I start first? So really trying to troubleshoot and prioritize, I think, becomes bigger for me than feeling overwhelmed.
Okay. All right, good. Leadership is a really big field, and there
Yeah.
are a lot of players in leadership. How do you differentiate yourself from the rest of the pack, from your competitors?
That is a really great question, because you're right. There's a lot of us out there. And that's one of the things that I really sat with before I even created the academy, to figure out what was going to be what I would showcase differently. And so the place that I've really spent the time working on is, how do I make whatever courses, materials, podcasts, anything that I'm putting out, how do I make it really action based and practical, so that a leader doesn't just learn something and go, oh, that was cool to learn, but I can figure out how to apply it into my role or my day-to-day life, because a lot of leadership can also be applied to your personal life, right? So I really work on that side of the practicality, the actionable steps. And that differentiates me from a lot of different leadership programs that, tell you the broad strokes, but they don't tell you how to actually put it in place.
Okay, good. Describe your ideal client.
I think first and foremost, whether it's an individual or an organization, that client has to want leadership development. They have to want to learn and grow. That for me is really the focus of when I'm looking for somebody to work with, or looking to kind of interview them if we're going to be a good match, is, are they wanting to learn, or are they just wanting to like get a certificate to show off, right? I want to make sure that they're really there to learn and grow. And for me, one of the big things that I feel about leadership is, it's not just about you. It shouldn't be at all really about you. It's about your team, and how you make them successful, and how you grow other leaders within your organization. And so I'm looking for people that reflect those kinds of values. They want to be authentic. They want to help other people develop as well as they are developing, right? And so it's not about what they're successful as an individual as, but what they're bringing their team along with, and how they're showcasing and celebrating their team along the way. So those are
Okay.
kind of two components that I really look for with the people that I want to work with.
Okay. Do you work with with organizations, people within a company, or do you tend to work with self-employed people or small business owners?
Um, Typically the leaders I work with are part of an organization, and I might work with them on an individual basis and they're coming to me on their own, or it might be through an organization that is creating leadership development content for their people. So kind of both of those tracks.
Okay. And you said your ideal client is somebody who wants to learn, wants to develop as a leader. What problems are you looking to solve for your clients? I mean, how do they know? How does a client know, or a potential client, a prospect know, when they need help in the leadership area? What problems are exhibited?
That's a great question, because a lot of times we think we know what we know, and we don't really realize what we don't know, right? That kind of subconscious unknown. Um, for me, with aspiring leaders, it's really easy, because you're like, you want to get into a manager role. I'm going to help you get there. I know the basics that you need to know as a leader. That's kind of a very easy category to get to. I think then you've got the managers that are, experienced a little bit. Maybe they're coming into a new team, and so the atmosphere is a little bit different, or something's going on within their team that they're trying to figure out, a conflict or something like that. And those, when you can't solve that yourself and anything you've tried isn't working, I think that's a great indicator that it's time to figure out other options, and look for how to learn and grow on your own for conflict resolution. And then you've got seasoned executives that usually feel like they know everything, right? Or they're pretty good. I've been a leader a long time. I'm, the C-suite level, but I'm feeling stagnant. Maybe that's how they're feeling. They're like, I'm doing this. I've been doing this. Is it time to go to a new company, or is it just time to look at leadership in a different way? And I love that, especially because that for me really taps into the continuous learning. And when I could say, well, have you looked at this? Well, no, I've never heard of that technique, or I've never heard of that topic, or I've never tried that. That to me is a really refreshing, I think, for those people that are seasoned executives and have done a lot of leadership, and they're like, oh, something new, this is cool. So I love that too, probably most especially because of that like peak of interest, I guess.
Okay. So you've you've kind of got several different targets, problems, and the needs that they would have within that.
Mhm.
Is there one of those groups that is right now emerging as the sort of the low-hanging fruit, or the group that you prefer to work with?
I think it is fairly easy to identify and easily help, if you will, the aspiring leader, because they're there, they want to learn and grow. Maybe they are a new manager, but they haven't done it really yet, and they don't even know. I have stuff I have to do on my own. I have stuff I have to lead. How do I balance that? Those are pretty easy things to work on and fix if they're willing. And so aspiring leaders tend to be the ones where, even in a company, they might say, well, we just hired a bunch of people. We've got some new managers that have never managed before. That's a pretty easy group to target, I would say, and to find.
Okay. I'm a big believer in really niching down.
Hmm.
And so I'm going to challenge you with this question.
Sure.
Because if I were coaching you and you were working with these really broad spectrum of people in terms of their leadership experience, and I would say it's important to niche down. What is your response to me?
Great question. All right. So as an analogy, I don't know, in elementary school, let's say, you're learning about, I don't know, I'm going to pick a random topic that I'm not a history person, but let's say the Civil War. Okay. So at the elementary level, there's a certain amount of information that we can give you about the Civil War that you can understand, that you can really, I've seen things in life. I could really figure this out. And then when you get to middle school, it's a little bit different level, right? I can start to add some new things about the Civil War that maybe you didn't know. And now you can understand that better because you have more life experience. And kind of same thing as an adult. If I was teaching somebody the Civil War, I can now go and look at some resources that maybe I didn't see in my K through 12 experience and say, oh, I never knew that about the Civil War. Maybe now I have more appreciation of history, and I can explain it a little bit better. So I think leadership is very similar. You learn about some specific thing like conflict resolution. You find maybe a template for how to, 4 steps on how to get a conflict solved. But then there's nuances that happen in there, right? This might work for some situations, might not work for others. As you become more experienced, you start to realize where those nuances lie. And, you start to understand different categories of people and how you might solve that conflict with them versus another type of person, and their personality. And then once you've solved, so many conflicts, you're like, oh, I feel a little better at this. I'd actually want to try to get them to solve it on their own and help them grow in solving conflict. So I think that leadership is similar to that Civil War example where you can start at a certain place and keep building those skills and techniques and get better and better at a lot of different parts of leadership.
Okay, great. Tell us a story or two about the biggest challenges you faced building your practice and how you've overcome them.
Sure. One that comes to mind first is building my website. I am not, all right, so I'm tech savvy, but I'm not like a coder, okay? My brother does that. I have no idea, right? So getting into website building and just, when you're starting out small and you're by yourself, you don't necessarily have the resources to put in to hire somebody to do that for you. And also, I feel like if I'm learning how to do something, it's I feel the value of that skill. So if I were to go hire somebody now, I could be like, oh, I get what you have to go through on the back end. So I see the value in what you're doing. So for me, anyway, sorry, I digress a little bit. The website building was something that I had never done. And it was challenging for me. And I'm still learning about building a website and changing things and trying new things. And so that's been both fun and it's like a love-hate relationship. I love how it's turning out. I'm not a huge fan of the process. But it's been a skill that I'm really happy that I now have. Some people are like, you should build websites for other people. No, it's not my thing. Like I don't love it like that, right? But I like how it's turning out for me. So that's one of the things where I've kind of educated myself on how to do it. And it was before I even launched the business, I was like, I have to have something of a website that looks decent before I even stand it up. Like, not perfection, just something that I'm proud of, that I could say looks like me, feels like me, showcases what I wanted to showcase. So it took me a few months before I even launched the business to do that. And I was just concerned about the look and the feel, because everything out there online has a look and a feel, and people know if it's quality or not quality. So I was really trying to err on the side of caution before I published anything. But that's been, like I said, kind of a love-hate. I like it now because I know how to do more things. And I've looked around for, thankful for YouTube. How do you do XYZ, right? And try to figure out, play around a little bit and have people look at it and give feedback. I think that's really important too. So that's one challenge that I feel like I wouldn't say conquered, because there's a lot more that I can't do, but I feel really good about where I am with that one. The other challenge I would say that's been big for me is just the sales piece of it, trying to get clients and organizations to work with me. I think you and I had talked previously. I have a veterinary background. I'm a certified veterinary technician. If you came in with your dog, I could sell you heart and preventative like nobody's business. You'd go away with a full year. I'd have no problem explaining it to you. Great sales that way. However, selling yourself is a bit different, and selling your experience and what you can do. And so while I feel pretty good about some of the stuff I put out for marketing, I just never felt super comfortable going to somebody cold and saying, "Hi, I'm Alessandra. This is what I do. Do you need my services?" So I've taken the time to kind of try it myself a little bit. Don't care for it much. Found myself a sales team that would help me with the outreach piece. And they kind of do the initial outreach and connection. And then I feel a little more comfortable now that somebody's talking with me, or with them and then me, that now, I can continue that conversation and kind of close the deal on my end by talking about what their needs are. So that's been kind of an ongoing challenge, mostly this year, I would say, where I started working with a team to try to figure that out.
Okay. Okay. So you recognized where you weren't particularly strong and you found help.
Yeah.
And how has outsourcing that initial outreach worked? I mean, is it effective?
Well, as somebody who's fairly type A and likes control, it's a little bit difficult to give that up. And so this group is very good in that they're willing to work with me on messaging and making sure things look and feel like me. So any message that's going out is a way that I would have worded it. So that's one thing I'm really comfortable with. We're also erring on the side of it doesn't feel super salesy to reach out to somebody. I'm more connecting with people that I think would find value in what I do, whether or not we work together. They might like following what I do on social media. They might like checking out my blog or my podcast because it's relevant to them. So we're working on an audience where I feel like it's a good audience to target, that we would have some alignment, and the messaging feels like me. And so I've had some good calls. I think we're still trying to tweak the process a little bit. We're only about 2.5 months in to working together. But I like their system so far, and I'm hoping that it'll be a little more fruitful. I have heard that it takes a little bit longer when you're implementing a new process, especially in sales or marketing, to kind of wait and see a little bit longer than not getting instant results. So I'm working with them still, like I said, 2.5 months or so, and giving them some more time to see how things evolve.
Okay. What has been, whether it's through them or something else, what's been your most successful approach so far in attracting new clients, even if it's still a work in progress?
Yeah, I got a couple of good leads through them that we were able to have some one-on-one conversations and try to figure out what that organization needs. And so I have kind of two that are waiting in the wings of trying to figure out who the right person at the organization is to consult with us. So I would say, that those have been really good. One is in the veterinary industry, which I know very well. One is outside that. But in talking with their people, I mean, leadership problems span all industries, and fairly often they're the same problems. So it's not something that's irrelevant. So I'm kind of waiting in the wings for those two, and trying to figure out where we're going with them. So that has actually been good for those two results. Some word of mouth has been really helpful too. So
Okay,
folks
I'm going to interrupt for just a moment. You just went off video.
oh, sorry.
There you are. I know,
It's
it's
the
weird.
internet.
Yeah.
Um,
So, okay. So didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
No problem. So, also word of mouth has been really good for me. In the veterinary industry, I've had some connections that have recommended me, since that's where a lot of the scope of work I've had done before for corporate, was happening. So word of mouth's been really helpful too in attracting people to talk with me.
Okay. Switching gears for a moment.
Sure.
What do you know now about building a consulting practice that you wish someone had told you when you started?
Oh, that's a that's a really good question. In that I think it's don't look at what others are doing in terms of their success and figure that it's going to be that way for you every time. I have a couple of friends who have their own businesses that are very successful, totally different fields than I am. And I've kind of watched what they've done and how they've approached things. Both very different approaches than what I've taken. Um, but I don't feel like either of their approaches would have been the right fit for me. So I think that while you can be fond of, what other people are doing and observe what other people are doing, don't necessarily feel like you have to A, follow those, or B, that you'd be successful if you did follow those. So I think really being true to yourself and that authenticity part has been really important to me. Um, and I think that was something that I wasn't quite aware of. Like I was like, oh, so and so does it this way. I could try that and see what happens. But I didn't realize that that way may not feel like me at all, nor would it resonate with my clients. So I think that was something that was a little bit surprising to me, was that these people could try these things and they work amazingly, but when I try that, or it either doesn't feel right or it doesn't attract anybody for me. So that was a little bit interesting.
Okay, that there's no one size,
Yeah,
it's not one size fits all.
right.
Yeah, okay. I just had a thought related to that, and it just flitted right out of my mind. Oh well, maybe it'll come back. Where do you see your practice in 3 to 5 years?
I would love to be doing, so this fall, I just completed a 5-month change management workshop, virtual and in person, with an organization, and loved that experience. They really got a lot of value out of it. I would love to be doing that 3, 4 times a year, with different organizations, not necessarily that program specifically, but something that is geared towards that organization's needs. I would love to have a larger kind of group of leaders within my academy that are discussing things with each other, especially. I think that we learn a lot from each other, even when we're not trying to find an answer for something. And so I love that community piece. Every time I do a program or if I have individuals working with me, we have a learning community. That's really important to me. Research is showing that that is the way to really build on your knowledge and to put stuff into practice is to have a community. So I would love to have more individuals in that community, have more organizations that I'm working with, quarterly even would be fine, and really build that up. I want to get these concepts out to people so they can start applying them really to their work.
Okay. What do you think is the biggest challenge you're going to face in achieving your goals?
Yeah, I think for me, at least what I'm foreseeing right now is just getting leads and clients and getting them to convert to sales. So,
You're not alone. From talking to lots of different types of self-employed consultants, that is the most common problem,
mm,
generating leads and converting to clients. And, unfortunately, there's no magic formula to do
right.
to that. And I remembered the question I had before about marketing. So when you have other people who are doing certain kinds of marketing strategies successfully, are there any strategies that you feel really that you're feeling an incredible amount of resistance to, even though you see them? Maybe it's a strategy that several people are using, but there's a voice in your head that's saying, nope, I'm not going there.
Yes, because I've tried it and it didn't work for me.
Okay.
So I have seen quite a few, and even one of my friends who has a business of her own have tried low ticket offers, so products that are either free or close to free, to try to draw people into a sales funnel where they then sell them other products that are larger. So two reasons that well, one mainly that I have an issue with is just Yes, people might buy something that's a little bit less expensive, but also what's the value that you're giving along with that? And I worried when I first started out, I created some things that were lower ticket items, virtual resources that I felt were really good resources and they were priced fine. But part of me is thinking, okay, if I'm a leader out there or a manager and I'm making a pretty decent salary and I see something to develop me as a leader and it is X amount of dollars, I have to look at that and say, well, what's the value of that item if it's, let's say, $5, right? If that item's $5, I might be like, oh, cool, $5, whatever. Even if it's bad, it's just $5. But what am I getting out of that $5 if I'm spending time on that resource? If I'm, trying to figure out how to apply that, what is that really going to do for me? And so I kind of went back and forth with low ticket versus higher ticket and what the value looks like, and really making sure that as I'm pricing, I'm making sure that I'm including, my time and experience as I should be paid. B, the value that somebody might see from that number. And then just making sure that I feel comfortable with that. I think that that might be another challenge that I still often deal with is, how do I price things so that people are comfortable paying that, but I'm also not shortchanging my experience and my, the context of which I'm doing it all, right? And the value that they're going to get out of it and the behavior change that they'll see. How do I not shortchange that with the price that I put? So I tried, like I said, tried a lot of low ticket stuff. I still have a couple of freebies on my website. My subscribers to my newsletter get free stuff whenever I'm publishing and try something new, they get to try it out for free. And I think that, you're reading my stuff every week. I should give you something, right? So I feel like that's an even trade. But then trying to show value in the higher priced items, I think is important too. And so again, I go back and, try to figure out where are the salaries at for people that I'm working with? What are people using in terms of money for professional development? Right? What are organizations willing to pay for professional development? If I look at something similar to my leadership academy with like, I don't know, university, what are they charging? What are their expertise for their faculty versus what I have, right? So I'm trying to really compare and contrast and try to price realistically, but well, so that people see value and also I'm, getting paid for what I do. So
You've got a good attitude because it's it's a trap that self-employed
yeah.
consultants can fall into of, I don't have enough credibility. I haven't been doing this long enough. I can't charge as much as, someone else who's got many more years of experience. And it sounds like you are recognizing that you deserve to be paid for your expertise and your experience, and you're factoring that in.
Yeah, I also don't want to draw anybody along and be like, oh, get this for $1. Now get this one for $10 and it'll add on to that and get this for $20. I would rather them purchase the larger thing that has everything they need and get to a result than, play games with little tiny things that I could put together. And again, it works great for other types of businesses and other people. I just haven't found it work for me. So,
Right. Because you're looking to make fundamental change in their behavior,
yeah.
in the actions they take.
Hmm.
And that is an important part of being authentic to you, and that, and recognizing that what you do doesn't lend itself to a low ticket entry level. It does mean that the sales process is probably longer because you're jumping right into a higher ticket item, but you're recognizing that you're not able to deliver what you think is important with low ticket.
Well, and I
So,
think it's kind of a catch-22 because it goes back to that sales piece, right? Now I have to talk about, I have over 15 years of leadership experience in building leadership programs. I have, I've done 40 plus programs for corporations that are as large as 5,000 people, right? So I have a doctorate in education. So I have to go back to, how do I market myself without feeling braggy? Because that doesn't feel good. But saying like, that's why the price is what it is, because I know how adults learn. I know the leadership stuff, all those things put together equal a value. So.
mhm. What do you do when you're talking to a prospect and you make the offer and they push back on price?
Um, so that's a good question. I've kind of gone to, I have a mentor that does similar work, and has for a longer period of time. And I kind of said, what do I do if somebody pushes back? I had, one of my first proposals, I was like, I don't know if this is priced right. Like, I feel like it is, but what if they come back and they want, something less? And the advice he gave me, which I thought was really good advice, and I'll pass that along, is that he said, well, how much can you do it for? And if you went down 10%, would that still be okay? And so when I looked at it and I was like, well, I can do it for this. I'm asking more than that, for my time and whatnot. Could I go down percent? Absolutely. And I could still deliver it as well as I could. So he said, if you can't do it for the 10% less, then say like, oh, well, we could change this. You don't get as much of that or whatever, look at the pieces to it, and adjust that way to fit their pricing. I think that there's a balance between meeting somebody where their resources at and making sure that you don't devalue your work. So I think that was the hard part. I'm like, well, I came to this number. The number feels really good. Now they want less. Okay. So he said, so throw out 10% less. Usually people are just looking for a deal, and 10% less typically satisfies them. So I went with that time, and it actually worked really great. So
Okay, good. As we start to wrap up, what advice do you have for other self-employed consultants?
I think number one, you need to be authentic to yourself, and what you really want to do. And for me, that meant drilling down really what's my mission and vision in the beginning. And mission and vision can change, but I think that as like a baby company, year or two, you're probably not deviating much from what your vision and mission are. And so I think that really nailing those down first. Why am I doing this? What do I want to achieve? What are the results I want my clients to have? That for me was kind of the most important thing, because now I can go back and say, okay, I'm creating this resource. Does it fit with my mission and vision and values? Right? Is it really what my client needs? Or is it just something that I think is really cool and I want to create it? Right. So I think that's number one, is be authentic and figure out what that mission is that you have. The second one is, don't be afraid of looking for learning opportunities on how to do different things within your business. Like if I hadn't looked at the website thing, I could have paid somebody. But again, if I had to make a small change, do I have to go to that person now, or could I do it myself? And so, like I said, I don't devalue having people come in and help you with it, but also I think you should have a little bit of knowledge about everything you're doing. At least to novice level, beginner level. So I think if you can try to learn it yourself before you outsource it, just to have an idea of what you're trying to outsource even, and what the value is of that to you. Like if I had been comfortable with sales initially, I probably wouldn't have outsourced that. But now that I've tried it and I'm like, oh, it's not really for me, who could help me? I have a value on what that means to me now. I can work on other things that my strengths are and let somebody else come in. So I think those are really kind of the two areas that I would offer advice on.
Okay. Tell us about your Leadership Academy.
Sure. So we have, I already mentioned we have a weekly email newsletter that's free, and that comes with a bonus of getting some free resources on our end. I have, kind of talking about things that people could access for free first. I have a blog we post a couple times a week, about different leadership topics, and those often link to one of those free resources. I have a podcast. We're on finishing up season 2, where I talk about, it's kind of a mini podcast, so 10 minutes or less. You can, I like to say on there, if you're going to the bathroom, it's a good thing to listen to. I don't know how to fit it in your day, right? Busy people. And we talk about different leadership topics, sometimes controversial things that come up. And as far as the Academy goes, I have a couple different programs that I have right now. One is a 6-month virtual leadership program that's for any level leader, aspiring to executive. And what it really does is it takes the foundational pieces for that person who hasn't managed before, and then starts to apply those things to their role. And so even the person that's managed for a while can take that information and say, am I applying it this way? Or what are the issues I'm having when I'm applying it this way? And so it kind of levels them up based on their experience. And so the program's 6 months, but they can keep going back in and building on the next piece as they, master a certain area. So,
Okay.
and so there's a couple other programs on there. There's a change management one. And then in terms of organizations, I like to work one-on-one with the organization and figure out what their goals are and what their gaps are. So like I said, that one company I was working with was leading change management. I've done some stuff with culture in a couple of organizations. things like that. Sometimes more organizational development based or operations based. And I really like to partner with that organization to see what they need.
Okay, wonderful. Well, that wraps up our interview. Nice job. And thank you for joining me today. What an incredible conversation with Alessandra LaTour. If there's one key takeaway from this episode, it's that its authenticity is crucial to building a successful consulting practice. When you stay true to your mission and vision, you create services that accurately and genuinely reflect your expertise and deliver real value to your clients. Remember Alessandra's advice: know your worth, understand the value you provide, and don't be afraid to charge accordingly. Now, to put this episode into action, take some time to clearly define your mission and vision, as Alessandra did. Ask yourself, why am I doing this work? What results do I want my clients to achieve? If you liked today's episode, click subscribe on whatever podcast platform you use to make sure you don't miss future episodes. And leave me a review in your podcast app or on YouTube. Until next time, keep thriving through.